Hey, what's up, guys? This is David Chase Taylor of 911truther.org. Today is April 10th of 2026. So, based on breaking news and events, it appears that CIA headquarters located beneath CERN at Lake Geneva in Switzerland is going to stage a full-scale Russian armed forces-based military offensive targeting multiple countries in Europe on the date of Saturday, April 11th of 2026, specifically to spawn a second global biological pandemic and or trigger World War III. Exactly what type of attack in bombing or invasion is planned is obviously not known, but what we do know is that it's going to be chemical, biological, radiological, or nuclear in nature, likely featuring the mass deployment of blood agents, blister agents, choking agents, and or nerve agents, which are banned by the Chemical Weapons Convention. There's also the realistic possibility that the CIA will claim that Russia released some sort of a bioweapon in the attack as pretext for a second global biological pandemic. And in the aftermath of this impending attack, official declarations of war are going to be declared. Before I get into the potential scenarios, the two countries which are blinking red at this moment are, of course, Hungary, which has an election in 2 days. So a false flag attack, possibly targeting Budapest airport, the capital building of Hungary, which is called the Parliament building, or other locations in Hungary or neighboring countries is expected. This is likely going to be a false flag attack by Ukrainian troops from the so-called Shadow Army. So as I've detailed in these videos ad nauseum, the CIA has developed the single largest possibly Shadow Army ever in the history of the world, consisting of roughly 150,000 Ukrainian troops, most of which are not on paper because they have allegedly perished in the ongoing Russo-Ukrainian war. And then we have 25,000 special forces from Israel, from the Israeli Defense Forces, that were activated during Operation Breaking Dawn, which are likely going to play a key role in this upcoming attack. So essentially, in respect to the Shadow Army of Ukraine, according to Wikipedia, a total of 140,000 Ukrainian troops have allegedly died in the ongoing Russo-Ukrainian war. This number coincidentally reflects the amount of Russians, which have been participating in these Zapad 2021 and Zapad 2025 drills, which I'm going to get into in a second. So essentially, these are basically troops which are going to be used in a false flag attack targeting Europe at a later date, likely wearing Belarusian and or Russian uniforms. So exactly how this is going to play out in reality is obviously not known, but it appears that it's going to be multifaceted attack front, likely featuring three, in keeping with the numerology of the symbol of Ukraine, which is a trident. Tri is 3, and dent is to punch something forward. So they're going to likely stage 3 fronts in this assault, which is expected on the 11th of April. We're likely going to see the aforementioned IDF soldiers seize Capitol buildings in Europe, across Europe, under the guise of Russian Special Forces-based military offensive. So we're likely going to see storming attacks by Israeli soldiers dressed in Russian uniforms, targeting multiple capital cities such as London, Paris, Warsaw, Berlin, Kiev, Vienna, etc., etc., etc. Then we're likely going to see German-made Dolphin-class submarines of the Israeli Navy masquerade as Russian submarines and launch a naval bombardment targeting multiple cities such as London, such as Paris, possibly the Scandinavian cities, such as Oslo, Reykjavik, Copenhagen, Helsinki, Stockholm, and even possibly as far east as Kiev. Then we're likely going to see the Israeli Air Force airlift these aforementioned 150,000 Ukrainian troops and then airlift them into Europe over the line, and then they're going to likely be wearing Belarusian or Russian uniforms, and then it's going to appear as if the Russians are attacking. So you're going to have multiple capital cities be seized, then you're going to have a naval bombardment targeting Europe, and then you're going to have paratroopers coming in. So it's going to give the appearance of a full-scale Russian attack and invasion. And this is because as soon as this happens, the leaders of NATO already have a blueprint set forth by the CIA, not to investigate, not to interrogate, but just to declare war on Russia and basically launch a bunch of missiles, and then we're going to have the mutually assured destruction scenario of all-out nuclear war. This scenario, which I've just outlined, is reflected in the numerology, which I'm going to go through. So, for example, the date of April 11th of 2026 marks exactly 123 days since the CIA assassinated Royal Air Force Corporal George Hooley in a so-called training accident while paratrooping in Ukraine back on December 9th of 2025. The number 123 equates to ABC, which is atomic, biological, and chemical. That's because this impending attack is going to be exactly that: atomic, biological, or chemical. George Hooley, this is just conjecture, but I believe he was training the Ukrainian, these 150,000 troops of Ukrainians that have allegedly perished. Because I say that because we have more raw footage of the Vietnam War 50 years ago in the 70s than we do of the ongoing Russo-Ukrainian war, in which every single soldier has a camera and they all have Starlink internet access, which begs the question, why? And I believe that this war is largely a drone war, and it's largely a non-combatant. It's basically both sides are complicit in basically faking this war for political reasons. So Zelensky is doing it in Ukraine to keep power. Putin is doing it in Russia to maintain power and to basically maintain martial law throughout the Russian Empire and to hold on to the office of president. So the aforementioned George Hooley was likely a blood sacrifice that was offered up to this impending attack, which will likely feature roughly 150,000 Ukrainian troops wearing Russian uniforms paratrooping into multiple European nations on the date of Saturday, April 11th. This number, 150,000, I didn't pull it out of my ass. It's basically the amount of Russian forces that participated in Zapad 2025, which was a chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear exercise by the Russian armed forces in Belarus back on September 12th through the 16th of 2025. And so Belarus is evidently the launching point for this alleged attack. Zapad, of course, translates from Russian into English as the word West, because this is designed to sell the notion that Russia is invading Europe from the east into the west. Also, the date of April 11th marks exactly 1,345 days since the CIA executed Operation Breaking Dawn, which was the activation of 25,000 Israeli Defense Forces back on August 5th of 2022, which will likely play a key role in seizing European capitals on the date of April 11th. Also, the date of April 11th marks exactly 1,507 days since the CIA staged the Russian invasion of Ukraine back on February 24th of 2022. This number, of course, has the number 17, which equates to letter Q, as in coup d'etat, because this is essentially a coup d'etat of the standing order in Europe, because it's going to result in World War III. Also, the date of April 11th marks exactly 1,669 days since the CIA staged Zapad 2021, which also featured 150,000 troops performing a massive military exercise in Belarus back on September 10th through the 15th of 2021. Of course, the number 19 equates to the letter S, which is an acronym for Switzerland, and then, of course, 66 is 2 6s, or 26, which equates to the letter Z in the English alphabet, which is an acronym for Zionism. which is the political motivation, because you have the first Jewish state of Switzerland, founded circa August 1st, 1309, is controlling with the Israelis. The third Jewish state is basically working with Zionist operative Vladimir Zelensky to basically orchestrate this attack on Europe, because there's nothing that Zelensky wants more than to get the United States and NATO involved in a full-scale war with Russia. Also, the date of April 11th marks 4,433 days since the CIA staged the first Russian attack and invasion of Crimea, Ukraine, back on February 20th of 2014. And of course, this has a number 33, which equates to cc, which is how poison gets measured. And I believe that this attack is going to feature biological chemical warfare. Also, the date of April 11th marks exactly 12,229 days since the Baltimore Sun published a report entitled "Russia's Still Doing Secret Work on Chemical Arms." So this is basically, they're going to sell the notion, as they did with the Ukraine biolabs, that particular propaganda narrative that was disseminated because they plan on staging a Russian biological or chemical attack targeting Europe at a later date. And this appears to be scheduled for Saturday, April 11th of 2026. So obviously, if the CIA stages any sort of Russian military offensive targeting any country in Europe on the date of April 11th, especially in respect to Hungary, because the CIA basically wants to get Viktor Orban out of office because he is friendly to Russia. So what they're trying to do, all the EU diplomats in Belgium, in Brussels, are trying to assassinate him, which was planned earlier this week, and stage some sort of a terror-related event. This is going to be executed on the ground by the Israeli Mossad, but something is going to disrupt this election. They're going to stage a cyber attack, they're going to stage a terror attack, they're going to stage a bombing, they're going to stage, that's why they spawned this narrative that somebody was trying to blow up the pipeline in Hungary. They just staged they just targeted a pipeline in Italy yesterday. And so they're getting ready to stage some sort of event which will be scapegoated onto Russia. In reality, this is going to be executed on the ground by the Israeli Mossad at the behest of Switzerland, and then it's going to be subsequently blamed onto Russia. So in the next 48 hours, a major false flag attack or terror event is going to be blamed on Russia surrounding this election. So this is because when Orban is reelected, it's going to be a referendum on that. Most of Europe wants to move forward with regular relations with Russia. The EU being controlled by Switzerland, they don't want this. They want to continue this this bullshit. Basically, it's essentially a Cold War, a new Cold War with Russia, banning them from the Olympics, banning them from international competition. Basically adding all sorts of tariffs and sanctions against Russia so that they can't participate in business and sporting events and stuff like that, basically making them a pariah in Europe. So that obviously is, when Viktor Orban gets reelected, that's likely going to be a referendum, a de facto referendum on how the Eastern Europe feels about Russia. Anyway, so obviously CIA is plotting some sort of false flag attack or military offensive by Russia in the next 48 hours, most likely starting on April 11th and possibly on April 12th too in Hungary, surrounding the election of Prime Minister Viktor Orban. So obviously, if that happens, I kindly ask that you download this video and share it with local, state, and federal law enforcement, military, and intelligence officials, as well as with local, national, and international media outlets. Peace.